every country you go to, whether it's where I started in California or a nice beach in Costa Rica or China or Iraq or Europe, everybody is always so sure that the way they see the world and the way they're doing things is the correct way or the best way. It's just like unquestioned. And it's usually because they don't have any perspective that there are other ways you could do things or think about things. It's just, well, yes.
Welcome to GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, aka the Going North Podcast, where authors from around the world help you realize that success is tangible. You'll leave with at least one new piece of inspiration or information to help you keep going north every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for authors known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North Podcast. And we got one heck of a super special, awesome human for you today because my goodness, you're going to be in for a treat that's good enough to eat because we got another TEDx speaker in the house, baby. That's right. Red teddy bears ahoy because my goodness, today's guest in particular, personal development mentor, a world traveler, and a speaker whose ideals include self-inquiry, challenge, and analysis for the purpose of helping people to discover who they are. And this wonderful gentleman right here writes to assist others in undoing faulty narratives about who they are and how life works so that they may begin to make more meaningful choices and resolve their deepest burdens. So let's give it up for the GD himself because he is that damn good. I'm doing it in reverse with his initials this time because that is freaking amazing because it's so darn true. Gregory Diehl. How you doing today, Gregory?
I'm great. GD great. Gosh darn great is how I am.
There we go. That's the more PG version. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. My man. That's right. That's right, indeed. My man is prolific, multiple books, got his own publishing company, like helping out other folks with their thinking and helping folks really heck with life, period.
That's what it's all about. I view books as a communication medium for getting important ideas out into the world and changing the way people think, whether they're my books or someone else's. I think it's very important work.
Oh, yeah, I can say that again because, like, in this wonderful age of everything, for lack of a better word, it's like, hey, folks got to actually do some thinking and not relying on seeing one random article on page one of Google. It's like, all right, this is the concrete truth. I must go out into the world and preach it for no reason. But hey, because some people can do that.
Well, it's kind of amazing that books have remained so popular in the Google age, where you can just look up the answer to one question and click on the top result that comes up. And that's great too for a certain kind of information and certain kind of question. But books still hold this kind of cherished place in our heart where you have the space and the format to explore like all aspects of an idea or an entire paradigm, a way of seeing the world that you can't really do in just a blog post or a quick little Google search.
Oh yeah, I can say that again, especially with the wonderful books that you've put together, man. So my goodness, backtracking a bit to where you currently are today, like at the age of 13, did you always see yourself where you are today, being a wonderful thinker, helping out wonderful folks join the business of immortality?
The age of 13, well, I don't think I knew that I was going to become an author or take the specific path in life that I've taken, but I knew I was smarter than most people, and I knew I didn't want to do what most other people were doing. So I definitely could have predicted I would have ended up on a very unconventional, kind of iconoclastic path, but there's no way I could have predicted this specific path. No.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right indeed. Yes, because I forgot to mention, my man is actually in the. Actually, I think you're actually the first guy who I've actually interviewed who's actually currently living in Armenia, if I'm not mistaken.
Not a lot of people live in Armenia, actually. It's it's a small country, not a huge population at the moment. So yeah, usually people think I'm saying Romania when I say I live in Armenia. Like, no, that's a different country.
Oh yeah, you're so right about that. Like so many countries that don't get a lot of press and publicity for some strange reason. But hey, who knows? Maybe some folks in the country might prefer it that way, depending on what's going on, I guess.
Uh, well, I like being in places where one, yeah, there's not a lot of noise and busyness, so I generally try to stay out of cities anyway. And I like places that are kind of at this crucial level of transition and development, where they're not so underdeveloped that you can't even live a comfortable life or get access to modern amenities. They're also not super developed where everybody already seems to know what they're doing. I use the term second world country sometimes. So they have intelligence, they have resources, they have ambition, but they're at this crucial juncture of like learning how to upgrade the way they live and the way they see the world, so that they're not desperate, they're not starving to death like some really underdeveloped countries, but they're also still kind of forging their destiny and figuring out where they will go as a country, as a culture from here.
Yeah, I love it. And you rarely hear second world. Like it's usually first or third. Like you never hear the
Uh-huh.
second.
Right. It's
So
it's like you're either in super modern and glamorous America or Monaco or something, or you're in, starving in some underdeveloped African hut somewhere, right? Those are the two dichotomies that most people perceive. But there's a whole world in between those two extremes that is kind of fascinating for me to explore from like a sociological perspective or an economical perspective.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You can say that again. Heck, well, speaking of the wonderful world that's out there that people tend to ignore, like in your, what are probably the three major lessons you think you've learned or gained from your world travel, since you've traveled all over the globe?
Oh, well, one thing that has always stood out to me is fascinating. I started traveling when I was 18, and immediately I recognized how interesting it was that every country you go to, whether it's where I started in California or a nice beach in Costa Rica or China or Iraq or Europe, everybody is always so sure that the way they see the world and the way they're doing things is the correct way or the best way. It's just like unquestioned. And it's usually because they don't have any perspective that there are other ways you could do things or think about things. It's just, well, yes, I'm Chinese and this is the way Chinese people do things. And it's, why would we do it any other way? Well, I'm Californian. This is the way we do things in California. Why would we do it any other way? And of course, culture is an inevitability. Culture is just like a collection of general traits that people develop living near each other, being influenced by one another. Uh, and that's fine, it's necessary. But what's astounding to me, and really a problem that I think we as individuals need to work on overcoming, is the unwillingness to question that the way you do things is the only or best way to do them or see them, right? This encompasses everything we do. It's like, oh, well, I'm from a Muslim country, so of course I'm a Muslim, and of course I'm sure that Islam is the correct religion. Okay, well, would you be that sure if you'd been born in a Christian or Jewish country? Are you sure that this is the best way to raise and educate your kids? Well, yes, of course, this is the way we do it in my country. Okay, but if there were a better way, would you at least be open to the possibility? Would you at least like want to know? Maybe my kids will be happier and better educated if I take some lessons from the way these people do it. That's like the crucial part of growth, that willingness to consider that there might be better ways to do the things that you just kind of unquestioningly do in your life. And because you don't question them, you don't even see most of the things you don't question. Like you're ignorant of the fact that you're ignorant of them. And traveling a lot is the kind of thing that gives you that perspective of, oh, well, why do I believe this? Why do I do things this way?
Powerful point. Powerful point. I love the fact that you mentioned how it's crucial to your growth. Like traveling is probably one of the major things a lot of guests in the past have probably said more than anything else when it comes to advice to give to their 25-year-old self. And what you just mentioned is one of the major reasons because of it. Because it's like, oh, wow. It's like, hey, I was born here, raised here my whole life. You know what? I didn't get out of my metaphorical box of the country, but you know what? I'm alive and this is the right way to do things. Who cares how big the world is?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And again, and that's fine as long as those, they're limitations essentially. When you reach that point where you say, okay, I'm fine with things being this way. Okay, yeah, we all have to be fine with something. But it's when you kind of extend those limitations to others, or even like violently enforce them, which is often the case with people in positions of authority, that you really have a problem, because you're kind of holding the whole human race back if you insist that all people must conform to the way you have accepted that things are, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like especially the whole force thing. Like, like I can understand why, because folks can sometimes get drunk with power, and it's like really like, come on, y'all. But at the same time, it's like, can you at least take the different route and just consider a different approach if it's necessary?
Yeah, well, that takes a certain amount of humility and open-mindedness that most people don't have after a certain age. That's why I like working with kids and teenagers. They're much more open-minded about how things work or how they could think about things better.
Yeah. Oh yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So my goodness, man, so that's just the one powerful lesson. Any other two that have stuck out to you from your wonderful world travels?
Yeah, I think that it's actually very easy to meet the basic requirements of happiness or satisfaction or contentedness in life. That's one thing you learn when you live out of a suitcase for a long time, or when you show up in a new place, you don't know anyone, you don't even know where to get a meal or where to sleep or something. uh, when people travel on vacation or like for holiday, they usually have like everything planned in advance, like a resort or a hotel they're going to be staying at, where they're going to eat, what kind of attractions they're going to see for a week or two. And when you kind of travel spontaneously, you just show up in a place and you have to figure out a system of order and what you're going to do, where you're going to stay, where you're going to eat, how you're going to spend your time. You realize it's actually very easy to meet those requirements. Like, okay, I need food in my belly, I need a bed to sleep in, I need somewhere I won't be attacked, I need some basic form of entertainment. That's actually quite easy to do in most places when you understand the requirements of your own needs and what you're looking for. And when you try to plan everything out ahead of time, your standards suddenly get a lot higher. Like, okay, well, do I want to go on this tour package? Do I want to stay at this nice hotel versus this slightly nicer one? And that's what most people are thinking of when you say you travel a lot. And that's why they'll ask, like, well, how do you have enough money to do that? How do you have enough time to plan all that? And well, because I'm not traveling in that way where everything has to be planned out and you have to have really expensive accommodations. And I'm traveling in a way where you just show up and kind of figure out the answers to these questions or the solutions to these problems as you go. And in most parts of the world, it's not too expensive to do that. And you become very adaptable. And it was actually kind of a transition for me. About 3 years ago, I bought a house in a village here in Armenia and started fixing it up, refurbishing it, acquiring furniture and lots of material possessions, which was the first time I'd done that in over a decade. And even now, it's still kind of like I'm not really used to having one place with lots of stuff that I own and like long-term plans for what I'm doing in this location and my stuff and my connections here, because I got so used to just kind of improvising these things and figuring out how to meet my needs as a human being on the fly as I moved. And there are advantages to both approaches, certainly. Like there are certain things I enjoy more about my life living in one place and having this stability and like a television and a rug and lots of people who have known me for years. But in a way, I also still do miss just living out of a suitcase and figuring out how to live and be happy in the moment each day. There was sort of like a Zen quality to that. Like, what do I need right now? How do I get it? Am I content? Yes, done.
Ah, love it indeed. Love it indeed. Yeah, because you're so right about that. It's like the traveling. It's like, oh god, like how can you do all that? And it's like, like the money and the time, like required. And you gotta really know where you're gonna go. And it's like, oh man, I gotta plan a flight back home. It's like, nah, just testing your curiosity, and I'm guessing in a way also increasing your problem solving abilities too on the way with all that wonderful on the fly thinking and exploring and just taking in the culture.
Yeah, when you take a 1 week vacation from your normal life, you have the default system that defines your life, And then you have this exciting little exception. Okay, for a week, I'm going to be a different person, but then I'm coming back to the old system, the old life, the old worldview that I know. And when you don't have that, when you're kind of just going and exploring, you're just reinventing yourself constantly.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, indeed. Oh yes, indeed. My goodness. So with that wonderful reinvention period, my goodness, have there been any parts that really like just stayed the same? Has there been like any particular belief that has like gotten stronger as a result, or is it like, I think everything is changed. I think I'm gonna think this certain way now, especially since the fact that you clarified a lot of your thinking in a lot of the books that you've written.
Well, I think what happens when you have a wide variety of experience is not that you just change randomly and arbitrarily and maybe tomorrow I'll wake up liking a completely different style of music and completely different food and my favorite color will be pink instead of blue and I'll be an asshole instead of a nice guy. Like, who knows? I don't think you do. I don't think you just completely randomly become something different. I think you discover more of the patterns and principles that define you through a variety of experiences. Just the way that those show up can change drastically. It doesn't just look the way that you're used to it looking. Uh, I've discovered so many universal truths about myself that have remained true, whether I'm in China or California or Italy or Ghana or whatever. Like, I'm very passionate about education and communication, which is why I started writing books, because I'm reasonably certain that will remain true for the rest of my life, no matter what other cultural lifestyle experiences I have. And that's much more difficult to do if you kind of just fell into one way of being. Like, you just went to college after high school and studied whatever you were most interested at the time, or whatever was most practical or most affordable, and then you got a job in that field because, well, you needed a way to make money, and you didn't mind working in this type of work. And then suddenly it's 20 years later, and this is just the person you are because it's the path that was easiest for you to take. And maybe some part of you is like, well, what if I'd done something else? What if, I always wanted to play the piano or work with animals or whatever, but it was too inconvenient. And now it's much too inconvenient because you've got this whole life built around this other thing that you did. And that's kind of a shame. I think especially when you're young is the best time to just be exploring all parts of yourself before you've invested heavily into one avenue or one interest. And then when you've explored enough, it becomes much easier to say with certainty, this is the kind of person I am. These are the kinds of things I find meaningful and rewarding. And then you figure out the specific way to apply those things and use them in your life, hopefully to make enough money to support yourself too. But the main thing is just understanding what those core passions or interests or defining patterns are about you.
Oh yeah, definitely liking a date. Definitely liking a date. Yeah, X patterns. It's like, yeah, can't just be a rainbow one day and then become a checkered flag the next day, and then you know
Mhm.
what? Forget the checkers. I'm gonna be a zebra. Like, I don't think that's how it works.
I think some people do that just out of a sense of like contrariness, just like, I'm unhappy with my life. I need to be something different than what I am now. So I'm just going to be the exact opposite. Maybe that will solve that's like a midlife crisis. It's like, well, I was happy with one thing until now, but now I realize I'm unhappy. So I'm going to do something completely out of character and buy a really fancy car and leave my wife for a younger woman, because then I'll be different than what I am now. But it's like you just chose those things because they're different, not because they're actually what will make you happy. You don't even know what will make you happy most of the time.
Oh yeah, definitely could say that again indeed. Definitely say that again indeed. So my goodness, so with all this wonderful wisdom you've acquired in putting pen to paper, you got this shiny new book out indeed, The Heroic and Exceptional Minority. My goodness. So what led you to finally write this wonderful book and put pen to paper and put it out for the world to devour?
Well, this book is definitely the most difficult one I've worked on. I've written a few books before this, but most of them were quite instructional and practical. I wrote a book on branding. I wrote a book on travel, a book on how to write books. But this book is much more esoteric and philosophical. It's much more about addressing the way you see the world and your role within it. And as a consequence of that, it was the kind of book I had to rewrite a few times. It took me much longer. It took me about 3 years to write it. And it's not even a very long book. It's about 200 pages. And I really wanted it to address the kinds of psychological doubt and struggles that I think a specific type of person has, which I delineate in the book as somebody who is both heroic and exceptional, which colloquially might mean heroic is somebody who's impelled towards good and creating order in their environment and embodying their positive moral values. And someone who's exceptional has some characteristic that makes them difficult to qualify as the rest of everyone else, which might be some extraordinary ability they have. It might be a way they see the world that other people don't see. It might be some interest they have that is completely lacking in their environment. But exceptional literally means an exception to the rule, right? So it's just somebody who is different than the culture and the environment they're in, and therefore cannot live life according to the same rules as everyone else. And when you combine those two things together, you have the potential for a person who can change the world, through their exceptionality and their impetus towards heroism. They can do incredible things, but only if they can kind of accept the burden of the person they are and what they need to do to find a meaningful way to exist on this planet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, indeed. It was actually kind of interesting too when you mentioned it's probably the most challenging book you had to write indeed, because like my goodness, like with having to really rewrite and put your thoughts out there like that and really tapping into our inner heroism that a lot of us tend to want to tap into from every now and then. Like my goodness. Like what was the whole process for the book since you had to rewrite it multiple times? It took 3 years to finally get it out to the public.
A lot of it was tonal. Like I wasn't sure in exactly what way I wanted to address these people, because it's part of it is that this message is definitely subject to misinterpretation. Like I could see the wrong person taking a glance at any sentence or paragraph out of context and thinking I mean something that I don't. Like maybe this guy's trying to start a cult or something, or this guy's trying to tell people, screw other people, do whatever you want, be selfish, follow your own interests, and ignore the world. Because I talk about things in such a way like that, well, the world wants you to be one thing most of the time, by which I mean culture has its values and has this way of imprinting them upon people before they have the opportunity to choose their own values. And the task of the heroic and exceptional person, this minority of people, is to discover those things about themselves while ignoring the cultural pressure. But that doesn't mean like, screw other people and only care about yourself. It just means don't do things arbitrarily. Don't just believe what other people believe because it's what other people believe or it's convenient, or, a lot of cultural values do actually kind of make sense. Like don't kill each other and don't steal other people's stuff and be nice to your neighbor. Those are great values. Those are all very heroic things to believe. And so just because those are part of the dominant cultural beliefs around you doesn't mean you should just dismiss them outright. It just means be willing to question their validity, but also, embrace them if they turn out to be valid. So I could see some people having a problem with the way I talk about these sort of things, because it does in a way sound very anarchic, like these can be dangerous ideas in the wrong hands, or somebody who doesn't take responsibility for really embodying them. Being exceptional means you have potential. It means you have power, and you can use that power destructively if you're not careful and you're not responsible for the effects of your actions. And so I do very much try to put emphasis on like there is a responsibility that comes with seeing the world differently and having different ambitions than other people. And that's part of the heroism qualities, that taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions. But if you just read part of the book that didn't emphasize those aspects, you could see this as kind of a dangerous way of seeing the world and dangerous advice that is mostly directed at young people who are quite impressionable. It's really meant to be taken as like a complete package, a way of seeing the world that can't just be boiled down to one piece of advice. Okay, live your life this way, do this kind of thing with your time.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And it is interesting indeed. And heck, if I'm not mistaken, you actually consider yourself an anarchist at one point, right?
Well, it depends what you mean by that word, which is the case with most words, but especially a very sensitive word like that. What does it mean to be an anarchist? What does anarchy actually mean? I mean, in the most literal interpretation is without ruler. without rulership, anarchy, right? And in that sense, yes, I'm certainly a literal anarchist. I don't believe that there should be rulers of our lives, authorities forcing us to live a certain way. I think we should be free to choose how we live. And with that freedom comes the choice to choose people that we want to listen to, right? We do this all the time. If you get on an airplane, you are, when you buy the ticket and take your seat, you are choosing to defer authority to the pilot and the staff manning that airplane, right? You're not saying, I'm the king of this airplane. I'm not going to let anyone choose how we fly or where we go. I'm an anarchist. I'm a strict individualist. Nobody tells me where we fly. No, you're saying, okay, I am choosing to listen to this person who knows more than I do about how this plane works and who has agreed to take us to this destination. But the point is, nobody had to force you to do that. You made that choice without a ruler directing your life for you. And it's actually very appropriate for the next book that I'm releasing, which has actually already been written, but not released yet, called Everyone is an Entrepreneur. And it's heavily inspired by my experiences here in Armenia, which is a post-Soviet country where 30 years ago, there was still communism, which is like the direct opposite of anarchism in the most literal sense, because almost everything in the economy is controlled by a central authority to an absurd degree, like how shoes and bread are made and distributed and what job everyone will have and how you're allowed to live your life. All those decisions were made to an absurd degree of specificity and enforced with literal slavery and death, where you could be sent to a gulag or killed if you did not just do what you were told to do. That's as far as from anarchy as I can imagine. It's a literal dictatorship. And so the point of the new book is kind of encouraging people who live in post-Soviet societies, like here in Armenia, to learn to see the world as self-empowered individuals capable of figuring out how to choose their own values, produce their own wealth in an entrepreneurial kind of way, and just live their own lives.
I love it indeed. Love it indeed. So I guess in a way, it's somewhat of a progression from this book in a way with some of the things. It's like you're in a way like helping folks to encourage to embrace their uniqueness in a way and really tap into their courage. And I guess with everybody being an entrepreneur, with the upcoming book after this one, I guess in a way, it's just helping folks to further embrace that courage and then really own their actually just own their freedom and really take advantage of the opportunities that they have, right?
Yes, but and always, choice is such a big part of that, choosing something because it actually is in line with your values and it's what you want and it's the best option available to you. When you can live your whole life that way, where you can realize it is possible for people to choose things mutually, which is really what an economy is in the most direct sense. Any buying or selling that happens either on a small or large scale is because multiple individuals are choosing, this is the best option for me. This is the best thing for me to do with my money or with this thing I've produced. I choose to sell it for this amount of money. And this money I've earned, I choose to spend it in this way because this book or this table or this food or this house I'm getting in return is what I want. It helps me fulfill my values in the best way available to me, not because somebody has to be forcing people to live and work and spend their money and consume things in a certain way, which is what communism was.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's good to get away from that too. Cause yeah, man, like that's the beautiful thing about it. And the fact that, like, it's like, yeah, be free to choose, but also remember, it's like, hey, there's always a reaction. Like, hey, there's going to be a cause and effect here. Like, if you say something stupid to the wrong person, then they might fight you back, or something even more grave, like the classic example you dropped earlier about the whole Soviet Union country, where it's like, hey, if you don't make something in a certain way, then you could be killed or thrown in a gulag. Like, it's either you're in a place where that's getting away from that and far away from that, like, and encouraging folks to really keep that up.
Yeah, heaven forbid, you make your own bread because your family is starving, or you try to trade bread with your neighbor who's also starving without the approval of the Soviet factories. They have to be the ones making the bread for the good of society.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh God, no. Like, come on, y'all. Like, no, let's not go back to that. Yeah, let's not go back to that. So my goodness, man. So with all these wonderful books, man, like what's like your daily routine? Because I'm pretty sure you probably have at least like a thinking chair or someplace where you at least dedicate time to think?
My whole house is kind of like that. There are still refurbishments going on here, so it's a little bit of a state of disarray. But it's my cats are kind of like my thinking caps. I have a couple of cats. One of them is blind. Somebody brought her to me as a blind kitten off the street, and she mostly just sleeps on my shoulders while I'm writing. It's kind of a nice cathartic therapeutic experience. It's like my thinking scarf, I guess you could say, because she's kind of wrapped around my neck. So that's definitely a part of my creative process. Gotta have a cat or two. And I do like to move around a lot. I don't just sit in one place and write. Like I find the stimulation of, okay, today I'll work from the couch, today I'll work from bed, today I'll work from my desk, today I'll sit on the balcony and try to write. That kind of stimulation helps. And I do go into town twice a week. I go teaching those classes in town as sort of like a volunteer thing. And while I'm there, I go to cafes and get some social interaction. But mostly I like to live a very ordered, peaceful life. I like to avoid chaos and lots of people making noise and just doing things that I can't control. Which is a small problem because my neighbors have this bad habit of just walking into my house without knocking. It's a weird Armenian thing. I don't quite understand. Like, doorbells exist here. It's not like a concept they don't have. They just don't use them. They just kind of open the door and say, "Hey, Gregory, what's up?" And I'm like, "What? I was in the middle of doing something. Why are you in my house?" But yeah, I like to be in control of my environment, which is difficult even in a remote place like a village.
Like, yeah, hey, what's up, buddy? Like, ah, darn it, I had a thought that's gone now. No.
Like, guys, just knock. Like, just announce you're here. I'll open the door and let you in. It takes 3 seconds longer. You just try it. I promise. There are benefits to this way of doing things.
And there are locks, right?
Yes, yes, there are. But the point is, I shouldn't have to be mindful of, is my door locked all the time while I'm at home? When I leave, yes, I lock my doors.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. My goodness, my goodness. Freaking love it. So my goodness. So if you want to think better and longer, get yourself a cat. Have a meow session, y'all. That's right.
Yeah.
Unless you're allergic like me.
Yeah, that might be a problem. Okay, to each their own. See, it would be silly of me to try to enforce my standard upon other people for whom it would not be as valuable.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that Gregory was like going north, so I should get a cat. I want to think more and better. Like, oh, darn, I'm allergic to cat. It's so itchy. Like, but I'm thinking though. Oh man. Well, since this is far from your first rodeo and you've been on the guest side of the game multiple times, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on these podcasts?
I find that people are very reluctant to get into like the negative shadow side of motivation for understandable reasons. You want to keep things pleasant and possible. Like, tell me about some positive experiences in your life. Tell me what inspires you, blah, 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 blah. That's all great. But I think an equally important part of the equation is like, are you motivated in a negative sort of way, as in to like resolve problems and fight injustice and correct inefficiencies when you see them, things that irritate you or hurt your soul? That's also a very powerful form of inspiration and motivation, at least for a certain kind of person. Again, not my standard is not the standard for everyone else, but I often find many of my books are kind of being written from a place of, here's a problem with the world that I don't want to tolerate, and here's the solution. Which is not the way all books are written. A lot of books are like, hey, isn't this a great idea? Wouldn't your life be wonderful if you had this thing or thought this way? But I'm the kind of person where when I see like, hey, the way you think about this is wrong. Here is a better way to think about it. Or the way they do this is demonstrably inefficient or counterproductive. Here is a better way to do it. That I'm highly motivated by that kind of reaction to things. And you can kind of see that tone in most of my writing too, because otherwise I find it very difficult to just sit and write without that motivating impulse of, here's, fix this problem, explain how to do this better.
Oh yeah, I can say that again. Heck, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's where your book before this one, I believe the influential author came from because of one person got in over their head trying to do your branding book and they failed horribly.
Yes, I see you've done your research on me. Very good. Uh, the only reason I'm an author today and even got into writing and publishing is because some jackass woman stole a bunch of money from me and pretended she knew how to help write and publish books. And and I was so pissed off, not just by the fact that she conned me, but by how she was just able to represent herself as a false expert on a subject she knew almost nothing about. And upon reading other books about writing and publishing, I realized many of the people who promote themselves as experts on the subject have just a surface level understanding of how it works, and they're all just kind of regurgitating the same information for the purpose of like posturing themselves. I don't know. It's a very strange human habit I don't fully understand, because to promote yourself as an expert on something, to build a brand and a community around it, requires an enormous amount of effort. So like, why would you choose to do that for something you weren't genuinely very passionate about and genuinely an expert on? It's like people just want fame or recognition or money or clients. I don't know. But like, so I wrote that book heavily inspired by kind of fixing this pseudo expertise, this false posturing that exists in the writing and publishing industry now that places like Amazon make it easy to so easy to self-publish and write your own book and slap a cover on it and say, hey, I'm a published author. Like, I wanted there to be a good approach to these things, a principled and systemic approach that will apply to all people with something of worth to say, with real advice that really works, so that you can ignore all these charlatans out there pretending to be able to give you actionable advice. So thank you to that woman who stole $5,000 from me and pissed me off so much as to provide me the motivation to get into writing and publishing.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I guess that's the good side about the dark side, because it's like crap. Like it lost 5 grand, which is a lot of money to a lot of people, and it's like, man, like you know what? This is a darn problem in the space. I got to fix it. And man, oh man, it's a great problem to really tackle and fix, because that book in particular, like I haven't even scratched the surface of it yet. Like the audiobook's, I believe, 13 hours, and it's a mighty tome. Like you're real, it's like a one-stop shop in a way for those looking to really become an actual published author. So it's definitely a wonderful tome for your dome.
Yeah, it's sort of a unique selling point among books in that genre. It's over 400 pages. If you look up, self-publishing guides or how to write a nonfiction book on Amazon, almost all of them are criminally short, less than 100 pages, a couple hours in audio format. And again, they're mostly just useless, regurgitated surface information. So I wanted to be the outlier. I wanted to be the guy who wrote the definitive, comprehensive, all-in-one study course for what it actually means to write and make a book successful.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right, folks. If I pick up the wonderful book, indeed, highly recommended, y'all. And he reads it himself too. And if I'm not mistaken, you read actually quite a few other audiobooks too.
Yeah, I narrate all my own books, and occasionally people hire me to narrate theirs too. It's a living. It's quite tiring though, to sit in front of a microphone for hours and just kind of read at a slow pace every line of dialogue and edit out the mistakes until you have a clean read through. But yeah, it's work.
Oh yeah, you definitely say that again, indeed. Definitely say that again, indeed. So speaking of wonderful books and heck, even doing audiobooks, any advice for those maybe aspiring to do their own audiobook? Because a lot of folks tend to forget that piece of doing the audiobook with their wonderful books.
Well, first of all, my general approach is that if something is worth publishing, it's also worth publishing in audio. I think a lot of people, if you're not an audiobook listener, which I am, but a lot of people aren't, they might neglect that format because they don't realize that for some people that really is the preferred or even only format they'll listen to certain kinds of books, because maybe they're just really busy, or maybe they just find it too difficult to get into print or ebooks, you know and so they won't even bother to narrate it or hire a narrator, because they're thinking, well, it's probably not necessary because most people like ebooks or print books. But for a certain kind of person, they will skip over a book completely if it's not available in audio or not in Audible with their membership credits. So I would say, with some rare exceptions, like if you produce a cookbook or something that's, really meant to be consumed in the physical format because of pictures or layout or something, very few people would sit and listen to a list of recipes, for example, read through audio. It's generally a good idea to consider producing it in the audio format as well as ebook and print. But as far as if you should do it yourself, well, just because you can write a good book doesn't necessarily mean you should be narrating your own book. For one thing, as I said, it is quite tiring. It's quite a difficult process, even if you love your own books. And also, maybe you just don't have a good voice for it. That's also possible. That you being a good writer does not necessarily mean you are a good narrator. So if you've never done this kind of work before, I don't know, record a sample and ask your friends and your readers, does this sound good? Would you enjoy listening to this book, this voice read this book for 6 hours nonstop? Or should I get someone else to do it for me? And that's okay. There's no shame in that, in hiring someone else. So yeah, I like reading my own books because I know how I want it to be read. I know the inflection I intended it with when I wrote it, and sometimes that does add a lot to the meaning and the personality of a book, because a narrator is applying their own interpretation to your words, which may be very different than the way you intended it. And also, it's a good chance to kind of go through as a final read through of your own work, instead of just sitting on a screen over and over again making edits and micro adjustments. When you read your own words out loud, it makes you kind of hyper aware. How does this sound to other people? Is this really the exact way I wanted this phrased? So from an editing perspective, it's actually a very fantastic tool to read your own work out loud. So if you're going to do the narration as kind of the final edit before you publish, that's really effective for someone like me, at least. So I do recommend that people at least consider the possibility.
So maybe that's why, another reason why people are writing so many short books nowadays. They're like, let me not be in front of this mic in this hot room for freaking 7, 6, 10 hours.
Yeah, and of course, reading and recording the book takes a lot longer than actually just reading the book, because you typically say it out loud at a pace slower than you'd be reading it in your head, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you're going to have to re-record certain parts over and over again, and then of course you got to edit the whole darn thing, which it generally takes 2 or 3 times as long to produce it as the end product you end up with. So the influential author, because it was 400 pages, ended up being about 13 hours of audio, as you said, which means that I spent probably 30 to 40 hours producing that.
Woohoo! That's right, folks. So that means you got 30 hours of wonderful, wonderful production in 13 hours as a final product. Y'all better cop that wonderful project indeed, and all the other wonderful stuff my man is doing. So a fun question I've been loving to pop on guest. And since the main book you're promoting right now is the wonderful book, The Heroic and Exceptional Minority, if that book was a food item, what would it be and why?
Okay. If my book was a food, what would it be and why? Have you ever had durian?
Isn't that stinky fruit?
Yeah, it's a fruit from South Asia. It's this giant spiky ball that smells a bit like vomit. And there's the reason I said it's durian is because there seems to be, I don't know if it's genetic or what, but some people love the taste of durian, and some people it makes them want to throw up. Like, I don't know how to explain this. I'm one of the people who loves it. Whenever I'm traveling in Asia, like I eat durian every day if I can, but other people that can't even be near it. So I'm guessing there must be some specific gene that people have that either makes the taste amazing for people or awful for people. And I think the reason that my book makes me think of that is because this book specifically, but I guess to a degree, anything I write, you're either going to love my tone or not. But this book, the way I write about things and the specific things that I write, you're going to hear about a book called The Heroic and Exceptional Minority, a guide to mythological self-awareness and growth. And you're going to read a page, and you're either going to have that positive durian response or that negative durian response, where you're going to say, like, wow, this is exactly the kind of food I've been looking for my whole life. This tastes different than anything I've ever tried before, and I want more. Or you're going to say, ugh, what is that? Get it away from me, the heroic and exceptional minority. What does that even mean? Okay. And if that's your response, the book is probably not for you. And that was the point, that I didn't want the wrong kind of people just kind of picking it up out of curiosity and saying, okay, well, let's see what this guy has to say about personal growth. Oh, no, I don't like this, 1 star. I wanted the right kind of people who say, yes, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. I didn't even know there was a fruit that tasted like this, which is the reaction a lot of people have when they tried durian for the first time, because I really cannot think of another fruit or food that tastes like durian. I can't even compare it to other tropical fruits, really, and frankly, I miss it. Like, I wish I could get some imported here in Armenia.
Woohoo! I've been loving the answers to that question. My goodness, durian. I never thought that durian would be one of the fruits that would pop up, and when you explain it, it's like, oh, it makes perfect sense.
It's a highly selective kind of fruit, just as my book is.
That's right, indeed. Exceptional indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Yes, indeed. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're in the year of 2022 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Well, I'm 33 now, so that's 8 years of difference. What was I doing when I was 25? I was kind of hopping around the world, still trying to explore and figure out how things work. I would probably say to myself, what you're looking for doesn't really exist out there. I think at that time in my life, I was looking for like a version of society or civilization that made sense to me and catered to people like me. I would probably tell myself, okay, save yourself the trouble, because it's not out there. You kind of just have to build it yourself. You have to build your own environment, your own community, your own control of your lifestyle, where you can be the kind of person you want to be, instead of looking for something that already exists like that, because it just doesn't exist for people like me.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's right. Got to build that environment, y'all. That's right. Control it. That's right. Especially if you got some crazy, noisy neighbors. Like, hey, what's that strange guy over there writing books doing? Let me see what he's thinking.
I'm convinced half my neighbors think I'm some kind of spy or something. They seem a little wary of me.
It's like, we gave him a cat, a blind cat. It's been recording his musings out loud. We haven't found anything yet. We'll see what happens in the following year. See if he's really a good person or he's just hiding something. Oh man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, for those who want to keep in contact with the Mighty G himself and all the stuff you're doing and buy some copies of your marvelous books, I can even gift them to friends too. What's the best way for folks to do so?
Amazon is the best place to get the books, or other online book sites like Barnes and Noble. If you want to read The Heroic and Exceptional Minority, or my past book, The Influential Author, or anything else I've written. If you want to email me, go to my website, gregorydiehl.net. Diehl is spelled Diehl, or just contact at gregorydiehl.net. Get out of me on Facebook too if you want. I'm on there a lot.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. The GD himself. That's right, baby. That's right. Reach out to him. Check out all of his wonderful wares. Check out his TED Talk too. If you love what you heard today, because the man's got some good stuff out there he's putting out into the world, and be on the lookout for that upcoming book as well. Indeed, folks. Tell you, good stuff. Good stuff. Good for the mind. Good for the mind and keeping your brain with 6-pack abs, maybe even 8-pack abs.
8-pack lobes, frontal lobes, and all those brain folds. Yeah, gotta tighten those up.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Keeping it tighter than, I don't know. Probably a belt on a fat guy. There we go. Yeah, that's right. Bad analogy. Well, any parting? Got any parting words before we close up shop?
Have a day full of experiences that you genuinely find meaningful and engaging. However you need to do that. Do that every day. Rinse and repeat.
Thanks a bunch for sharing some of your time out of your day to listen to the Going North podcast. I would be really honored if you head over to the website goingnorthpodcast.com and share this episode with someone that you care about. And also, for bonus points, if you like, click on the shop tab on the website and grab some gear, advance others to advance yourself if you haven't already. Have a great rest of your day and keep advancing north to your greatness.